Welcome, traveler of dreams. Tonight's stories arise from shared rooms, where sanity quietly unravels. Before we get started, remember to like the video and subscribe, so you won't miss future horror stories like these. Also, let me know from where you are watching, so go ahead and leave a comment. Let's begin. That semester stands out vividly in my memory, because it almost didn't happen at all. I was in my final year of medical school, exhausted, broke, and barely hanging on, but determined to finish my internship. My name's Lena, and back then I'd been assigned to complete my rotation at Brenton General, a teaching hospital in a city I'd never lived in before. Most of my classmates got placements near home, but mine was nearly 4 hours away. I didn't have any family nearby, and by the time I applied for student housing, the hospital dorms were already full. Like most broke students, I went on a desperate search for somewhere cheap but livable. That's when my friend Riley, another classmate, texted me. "Riley, hey, where'd you end up?" Me, "Brenton General sucks, it's so far." Riley, "Wait, same. Want to split a place near the hospital?" It was a relief. I'd known Riley since our first year. She was witty, grounded, and we'd survived countless all-nighters together, so I trusted her completely. We found a place through a Facebook post, a small 2-person boarding room on Elmere Street in a quiet neighborhood just 1 bus stop away from the hospital. The landlady, Mrs. Porter, was an older woman who seemed pleasant but strict. She told us no male visitors overnight and reminded us to keep noise to a minimum. When we first moved in, it all felt fine. The room was small but tidy, white walls, wooden flooring, and a bunk bed to save space. Riley took the bottom bunk. I claimed the top. The first week passed easily. We'd wake before sunrise, catch the bus, then collapse at night after long shifts. Between patients and paperwork, we barely had the energy to speak, except for random late-night jokes about how medlife was killing us. But that changed one night. It was Thursday, and I was completely drained. The ER had been overflowing all day, and I hadn't eaten properly. Riley messaged that she was covering an extra shift since one of the interns called in sick. I decided to grab something from the McDonald's nearby. I remember that humid air, the faint buzz of the streetlights, and the sterile mix of coffee and disinfectant clinging to my scrubs. When I returned, it was close to 10:30 p.m. The building was silent, save for a faint creak in the hallway as I climbed the stairs. I locked the door behind me, climbed onto my bunk, and sank into the mattress. My body felt like lead. I scrolled through Facebook, half asleep, and messaged Riley. "Coming home tonight?" No reply. I kept scrolling through random videos. 5 minutes later, I heard the sharp click of the door unlocking. I was sure I'd locked it, but Riley had her own key, so I didn't think twice. The door opened and closed softly. I heard the sound of shoes being kicked off and the faint rustle of a plastic bag. The lower bunk shifted slightly. She must have climbed into bed. "Finally done," I mumbled. Her voice came softly from below. "Yeah, got us some breakfast stuff for tomorrow." I smiled faintly. "Nice, you're the best." We chatted lazily for a few minutes about the new resident who always messed up the charts, the vending machine that swallowed our coins, just meaningless chatter. Then she said quietly, "Can you turn the light off?" The switch was near the door, a few meters away. "Girl, you're closer," I muttered. "You do it." Her voice sounded weaker this time, strained. "I can't. My head's killing me." I sighed, pushed myself up, and sat on the edge of the bed. "Fine, I got it." I leaned over to complain again, and froze. The bed below was empty. The blanket was perfectly folded. Her backpack was gone. For a second, I couldn't process it. I looked down again, nothing. My eyes darted toward the bathroom. Door open, lights off. "Riley?" I whispered, no answer. Slowly, I climbed down the ladder, each creak echoing through the room. I checked under the bed, inside the closet, behind the bathroom door, empty. Then my phone buzzed loudly, nearly making me drop it. A call. "Riley." I answered instantly. "Where are you?" I asked. Her voice came through with background noise, people talking, dishes clattering. "Still at the hospital," she said. "Sorry, didn't see your text. I'm heading to McDonald's right now. Want anything?" My voice came out in a whisper. "You're not home?" "No," she said, confused. "Why?" I didn't answer. "I just ran. grabbed my phone, bolted out the door without shoes, and flew down the stairs. Mrs. Porter's door opened as I passed, but I didn't stop. I sprinted out into the street, heart pounding as people turned to stare from the 24-hour laundromat across the road. When I reached the McDonald's down the block, I saw her inside, wearing her scrubs and holding a paper bag. She frowned when she noticed me. "Lena, what's wrong?" I broke down right there, telling her everything, how I heard the door, talked to her, saw the bed move. She thought maybe I was half dreaming, until I showed her the call log. I'd spoken to her on the phone just minutes after that thing talked to me. We didn't go back that night. We checked into a cheap motel nearby and shared a bed, though neither of us slept. The next morning, we told Mrs. Porter we were leaving. She didn't seem shocked, only pressed her lips together and said quietly, "That room's been empty for months before you girls moved in." The last tenant was a nursing intern too. Poor soul never woke up one morning. That was all she said. Riley and I packed immediately and found another place near the hospital, even if it cost more. I couldn't bear to sleep in a bunk bed again. For months afterward, I'd wake to phantom creaks in the dark, certain that someone or something was lying beneath me, whispering, "Turn off the lights." Moving into that small apartment on the western edge of the city wasn't something I planned, and I couldn't have predicted how much it would alter my life. When I first signed the lease, I was desperate. I had just relocated to Dayton after finishing college and was barely surviving on a receptionist job at a dental office that didn't even cover my rent. My old place had been nice, but way too expensive. So when I spotted an ad for a 2-bedroom apartment listed at $900 total, I jumped at it immediately. The listing read, "Female roommate wanted clean, easygoing, no drama." That's how I met Tessa. She was about my age, mid-20s, tan skin, platinum blonde hair with black roots showing, a nose ring, and this half-lazy grin that made her look like she never took anything too seriously. She told me she worked a night shift at a gas station on Larkin Avenue. She came off as polite but detached, not unfriendly, just distant. The apartment itself wasn't great. It had a damp smell no air freshener could fix, thin walls, and a flickering kitchen light that buzzed all night. Still, it was a roof over my head. The first couple of weeks passed uneventfully. We exchanged small talk in the kitchen every now and then. She'd complain about rude customers. I'd tell her stories from the clinic. Well, we weren't close, just two people splitting rent. Then things started to look up for me. I got promoted. It wasn't a massive raise, but it was enough to make me start dreaming about having my own place again. I didn't tell Tessa right away. She'd been venting a lot about money problems, about how she hated her job and wanted to quit. I didn't want to sound like I was rubbing my good luck in her face. A few weeks later, she stopped going to work altogether. I didn't notice at first. My hours were long, and she was usually sprawled on the couch watching TV when I got home. One night I asked, "You off today?" She looked up, her hoodie drawn over her head. "Got fired," she muttered. "Really? What happened?" "My boss is a jerk," she said flatly. I told her that sucked and hoped she'd find something soon, but she didn't seem interested in looking. Over the next few weeks, something shifted. She was home constantly, sleeping in late, inviting people over at weird hours, strangers, men I'd never seen before. One of them had a spider tattoo that crept up his neck like it was crawling toward his jaw. I didn't want trouble, so I kept my distance. I locked my door every night and quietly counted the months until the lease ended. Then one Thursday night, everything unraveled. I'd stayed late at work and picked up takeout before heading home. The apartment was empty and silent when I got there. I ate, showered, and was halfway through a Netflix episode when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Tessa. "Hey, can you come get me, please?" I frowned. "Me? What's going on? Where are you?" No response. Then my phone rang. "Tessa," I answered. Her voice trembled. "I need you to come get me, please. I'm stuck." "Where are you?" I don't know," she stammered. "Somewhere near Mason Creek Park. My car broke down and I tried walking, but I got lost." "Mason Creek? That's 10 minutes away. How did you end up there?" "I was heading to this new job," she said between soft sobs. "Please, just come. I'm scared." Her crying sounded raw and real. "All right," I said. "Send me your location." She dropped a pin. According to the map, she was deep inside the park near the lake, an area known for being pitch dark after sunset. The only lights were in the parking lot, the rest swallowed by woods. Still, I grabbed my keys and drove out. When I arrived, the lot was empty except for one dim bulb flickering near the far corner. I dialed her. "Okay, I'm here. Where exactly are you?" "Walk down the path a little," she said, her voice faint. "You'll see a trail near the lake. Come that way." "You went into the woods?" "I didn't mean to. Please just come, I'm freezing." I sighed, turned on my phone flashlight and started walking. "Keep talking, okay?" I said. The gravel crunched beneath my shoes, loud in the silence. The light illuminated only trees and narrow trail ahead. "Tessa?" I called out. No answer. I checked my phone. Her location was just a few hundred feet farther. Then I heard rustling in the trees. "Tessa?" I said again. Nothing. Another sound, a branch snapping somewhere off to the side. My pulse raced. I turned slowly, scanning the shadows, and that's when I saw him, a man stepping out from behind a tree about 30 feet away. He wore a dark hoodie, hands buried in his pockets. I froze. Hey," I called out, trying to steady my voice. "Have you seen a girl around here?" He didn't reply, just started walking toward me. "Hey, I'm talking to you," I said, backing away a little. Then another figure appeared on the path behind him, coming from the opposite direction. That's when it hit me. This wasn't random. "Oh God," I whispered, spinning and running. Footsteps thundered behind me. One of them yelled, "Grab her." I tore down the trail, branches clawing at my arms, the phone slipping from my hand. My breathing was ragged as I spotted the faint glow of the parking lot ahead. I was close, so close, then someone yanked the back of my jacket. I screamed, twisting hard, and we both hit the ground. I scraped my knee on the gravel. He tried to pin me, but I kicked out as hard as I could, catching his jaw with my boot. He grunted and fell sideways. The second one was still charging. I scrambled up and ran, legs screaming in pain, heart hammering. I burst out of the trail just as headlights appeared down the road. A car was coming. I sprinted toward it, waving frantically. "Help, please." The car slowed, honking. The two men stopped at the edge of the lot, half hidden by the trees. The driver's window slid down, was a woman in her 40s. "Are you okay?" she shouted. "Call the police," I screamed. "They're after me." She glanced past me, her face going pale. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, yelling the details while keeping my eyes fixed on the woods. The woman stayed inside her car, whispering something I couldn't hear. I saw movement in the darkness again, then silence. 10 minutes later, blue lights flashed across the lot. Relief washed over me so sharply I nearly collapsed. The officers combed through the woods. About 20 minutes later, one came back and said, "We found 3 people, 2 men and a woman, your roommate." She says she didn't know what was going on, but we found drugs on her and the others, plus text showing she planned this. They were going to lure you out here and rob you. I sat in the back of the patrol car, staring as they led her past me in cuffs. She didn't look afraid. She didn't even look ashamed, just cold. She locked eyes with me and whispered, "It wasn't supposed to happen like that." That sentence still echoes in my mind. The robbery charges didn't stick. She got probation for drug possession. I packed up and moved out the next week, changed my number, and never looked back. Sometimes when I drive past Mason Creek Park at night, I still see that lone light flickering at the far end of the lot, and my pulse quickens because I know she's still out there and she still remembers where I live. I remember when I first moved to the city, I had just landed my first real job after college, an entry-level role at a downtown marketing firm. Everything around me felt overwhelming. The noise, the pace, the sheer energy. Back in my hometown of Fairview, the loudest thing you'd hear at night was maybe a distant train or the hum of crickets outside the window. But here, even past midnight, sirens sliced through the darkness. I barely knew anyone in the city except for one person, Hannah. She worked with me, a warm, cheerful woman in her early 30s with a kind smile and a laugh that made everyone's day better. People at the office adored her. She was the kind who'd bring pastries on Fridays, remember everyone's birthday, and somehow make looming deadlines seem manageable. One afternoon after work, I sat scrolling through apartment listings on my phone, frowning at the outrageous rent prices. Hannah noticed and leaned over. "Still can't find a place?" she asked. "Yeah," I muttered. "Everything's either way too expensive or looks unsafe." She paused for a moment, then said, "You know what? My roommate's been talking about moving out soon. I've got an extra room in the apartment. Why don't you stay in the living room for a bit until you find something?" "I really don't mind." I hesitated. I didn't want to impose, but Hannah's offer sounded so genuine that I eventually accepted. I couldn't have known then that it would turn out to be one of the most unsettling choices I ever made. Hannah lived in a 2-story duplex in a quiet neighborhood on the east side of town. The upper level was under renovation, so we used only the downstairs area. It had 2 bedrooms, Hannah's, which was bright and full of plants, and the smaller one that belonged to her roommate, Caleb. The living room was large enough for my air mattress, so I set it up there. It wasn't ideal, but it felt safe. That first night I met Caleb. He came home quietly around 8 while Hannah and I were arranging my bedding. I turned toward the doorway and froze. He wasn't what I expected. Caleb was tall but gaunt, with unkempt blonde hair hanging over his face. He wore a dark green hoodie and black jeans, despite the heavy heat outside. A deep scar ran from his eyebrow to his cheek, splitting his left eye in a way that made his stare even colder. "Hey, Caleb," Hannah said cheerfully. "This is my friend from work, Emily. She'll be staying here a few days until she finds her own place." Caleb's pale eyes flicked toward me, silent for a moment before he muttered, "Sure?" and disappeared into his room, closing the door firmly behind him. I turned to Hannah. "Is he always like that?" She chuckled softly. "He's quiet, maybe a bit awkward. He's had a rough time, but he's harmless." Harmless. That word would echo in my mind for months. At first, things seemed normal. Hannah worked long hours, and so did I, so we mostly crossed paths in passing. Caleb kept to himself, barely leaving his room except for short, quiet trips to the kitchen. About 4 days after I moved in, I woke up late at night to use the bathroom. The apartment was mostly dark except for a soft yellow light spilling from the kitchen. Assuming it was Hannah getting a snack, I peeked over the couch, only to see Caleb at the sink. He wasn't washing dishes, he was scrubbing something small under the faucet, wrapped in cloth, then slipping it into a plastic grocery bag. I froze, hidden by the shadows. He didn't notice me. When he finished, he tied the bag tightly and walked back to his room. I heard the door close, then the lock click. I convinced myself I was overreacting. Maybe he was cleaning something weird. It wasn't my business. But the next night, the same thing happened. The smell of bleach thick in the air, the same faint running water. This time, he saw me. "Why are you awake?" His voice was flat, unnatural. I sat upright on the couch, pretending I'd just woken up. "Couldn't sleep," I said, forcing a shaky laugh. "Too much coffee." He tilted his head, studying me, eyes glinting beneath the light. "You should try sleeping," he whispered. "People see things at night that aren't really there." A faint smile crept onto his face as he leaned closer. "Good night, Emily." Then he turned and disappeared into the hallway. The next morning I told Hannah everything. "He's up every night, scrubbing something in the sink. It reeks of bleach," I said. "He even came up to me last night. It wasn't normal." Hannah frowned. "Caleb?" "No. He's weird, sure, but not dangerous. I've known him for 2 years." "You don't know what he's doing at night," I pressed. She sighed, rubbing her forehead. "Emily, you're probably just anxious. New job, new city. It's easy to imagine things." "I'm not imagining this," I snapped. "He's hiding something." Before she could respond, we heard the door open. Caleb walked in carrying a brown paper bag, smiling too wide. "Morning, ladies." Neither of us spoke. Trying to break the tension, Hannah asked casually, "Hey, Caleb, what do you do in the kitchen at night?" "Emily says she hears noises." His smile vanished. "Why does that bother your friend?" he asked quietly. "No reason," Hannah said quickly. "We were just wondering." "I wash my clothes," he muttered. "In the sink?" I blurted out. "It's quieter than the machine," he replied. "You wash clothes in the kitchen sink," I said, unable to stop myself. His head turned sharply toward me. "Yeah, problem?" I shook my head quickly. "No." He dropped the bag on the counter. "Fine, I'll stop." Then he left, slamming the door behind him. As soon as he was gone, I told Hannah I wanted to look inside his room. "Emily, don't," she said firmly. "That's crossing a line." "Something's off about him," I insisted. "I just want to know what." Before she could stop me, I grabbed a bobby pin from her dresser and went to his door. It was locked, of course. "Emily, stop," she said, grabbing my wrist. "You don't understand," I pleaded. "If we don't check now, we'll regret it later." "You're being paranoid," she argued. The fight got heated and I stormed out. crashing at a friend's place. I never went back. 6 months later, I was back home in Fairview when 2 detectives knocked on my parents' door, asking for me. One of them, Detective Larson, showed her badge. "You lived with a woman named Hannah Lewis last year?" My heart sank. "Yes." "Why?" "She's been missing for over 3 months," the detective said gently. "We found her body 2 days ago under a bridge off Brookhaven Road." My legs gave out. The body had decomposed so badly it took weeks to identify. Then came the name Caleb Brooks, arrested for second-degree murder. My mind went blank. They said he'd been the one to report her missing, even joining the search to throw off suspicion. But his phone records and receipts placed him near the bridge the night she vanished. When they searched his room, they found several plastic bags containing blood-soaked cloths drenched in bleach, along with women's jewelry, one piece being Hannah's favorite bracelet she wore to work every day. During interrogation, Caleb claimed they'd argued about rent, that he found her dead afterward and panicked, dumping the body to avoid blame. He was sentenced to life in prison. I still remember his face that night in the kitchen, the reek of bleach swirling in the air, and sometimes when I lie awake I wonder if I had stayed another week, if I'd slept through one more night on that couch, would it have been me instead of Hannah? I never expected that sharing a house could twist my mind the way it did. Back in 2018, during my junior year at Ridgeview State University in Oregon, things weren't going great. I was stuck without housing for the next semester. My old roommate had dropped out, my girlfriend transferred to another college, and most of my close friends had already locked in their leases months before. I was torn between enduring another year in the dorms or taking a break from school altogether. Then, during finals week, I bumped into a guy named Liam Turner. We'd once worked together on a group project sophomore year. Nothing memorable, just one of those split the work and never speak again deals. Out of nowhere he asked, "Hey man, you got a place for next semester?" I said no, and he replied, "I've got a lease on this old 2-bedroom near campus. Cheap rent, but I need a roommate. You down?" Without thinking twice, I agreed. It felt like luck. The place was small, white-sided, with creaky floors and a porch that seemed one gust away from collapsing. Still, it beat the dorms by a mile. It sat on Holloway Street, a few blocks from campus, 2 bedrooms upstairs, 1 bathroom up there, and another near the kitchen downstairs. When I moved in, Liam helped me with a few boxes. He wasn't exactly friendly, but not rude either. "You can take the room on the left," he said. "The right one gets freezing at night." That was it. No small talk, no welcome beer, nothing. I figured he was just quiet, and since I was too, it didn't bother me. Classes started, and the first month went smoothly. We didn't hang out, just exchange quick nods or short exchanges in the kitchen. "You got class?" "Yeah. 10 a.m. You?" "Nah, off day." That was about it. But then things started to feel strange. It began with a noise. Early October, around 2 in the morning, I woke up to a rhythmic creaking like a door repeatedly opening and shutting. It was too steady to be the wind. Click, creak, slam, creak, slam. I grabbed my phone, switched on the flashlight, and stepped into the hallway. The sound came from downstairs. "Liam? You down there?" No response. When I reached the bottom, everything was silent, the kitchen empty, the living room still, the front door locked tight. I brushed it off, telling myself the house was just old. The next morning at breakfast, I mentioned it. "Hey, did you hear anything last night? Like doors creaking?" Liam shook his head. "Nah man, slept like a rock." I laughed awkwardly. "Guess this house just makes weird noises." He gave a faint smile. "Yeah, it does that." Something about the way he said it, like he knew more than he let on, stuck with me. About a week later, I woke to 3 slow knocks on my door around 3 a.m. "Liam," I called out groggily. "Nothing." I waited, then opened the door. The hallway was empty. His room was dark, door closed. I didn't want to wake him, so I went back to bed. 2 nights later, the same knocks, same time. The next morning I asked, "Did you knock on my door last night?" He looked up from his cereal. "No. Why would I?" "I don't know. Maybe you needed something." He smirked. "You sure you're not dreaming or sleepwalking?" The smirk didn't reach his eyes. Something about it unsettled me. One November night, I was up late studying for a midterm. About 1:30 a.m., when I heard footsteps downstairs. Slow, heavy. They moved across the living room, paused, then shifted toward the kitchen. I texted Liam. "You up?" He replied instantly. "Yeah." "You downstairs?" My heart skipped when he texted back. "No. Are you?" I met him halfway down the stairs, both of us holding our phones like weapons. We searched the whole house, locked doors, closed windows, nothing out of place. "Maybe someone broke in and left," he said. "How? Everything's locked." "Could have been an animal," he shrugged. "A raccoon?" I asked. "You ever heard a raccoon walk across hardwood?" He laughed. "Maybe sleep with a bat just in case." The way he said it, half joking, made it worse. A couple of weeks later, it escalated. Around 2 a.m., I woke to my door slamming. Not knocking, slamming. It rattled on its hinges like someone was kicking it. I couldn't move. It lasted maybe 5 seconds, then stopped. I waited in silence before opening the door. The hallway was dark, cold air brushing my legs as if someone had just been standing there. The next morning, I confronted Liam. "Did you mess with me last night?" He frowned. "What are you talking about?" "Someone slammed my door hard," he shrugged. "Maybe you dreamed it again." I didn't buy it. That night, I wedged a chair under my doorknob. 2 days later, I got a Snapchat from a guy named Riley Bowman. He went to our school. I'd seen him with Liam at parties but never talked to him. When I added him back, he messaged immediately. "Yo, you live with Liam Turner, right?" "Yeah, why? We used to hang. Has he been doing weird stuff at the house?" That froze me. "What do you mean?" "Like noises, knocking, stuff like that." "Yeah, how'd you know?" "Because he told me. Dude thinks it's hilarious. He's been doing that to you for weeks." My stomach turned. "You serious?" "Dead serious," he replied. "He did that to another guy sophomore year. Loves freaking people out. Said he hopes you move out so he can have the place to himself." I just stared at my phone, stunned. "He even asked me to help him once," Riley added. "One night we made noises in the kitchen while he texted the dude upstairs, but I stopped being friends with him after that. He's got problems." That meant the night we both heard footsteps downstairs. Liam was pretending. I felt sick. The next morning, I confronted him. He came down groggy, coffee in hand. "We need to talk," I said. "About what?" "About the crap you've been pulling." "What are you talking about?" "You know, the noises, the knocking, all of it." He stared blankly. "You're losing it, dude." "Riley told me," I said. "He said you bragged about trying to scare me." His face went flat. Then he smirked. "You believe everything you hear?" "He's just stirring stuff up." "So you didn't do it?" "Maybe once or twice as a joke," he said, laughing as he walked past me into the kitchen. That was when I knew I had to get out. The air in that house felt heavy, like he was always watching, waiting for me to react. I started locking my door every night, even though the lock barely worked. One night, around 1 a.m., I woke to faint whispers in the hallway. Soft, indecipherable. Then light tapping, like fingers drumming on wood. I turned on my lamp. "Liam, knock it off," I shouted. Silence. Then faintly I heard him whisper, "You're no fun anymore." That was it. The next morning I packed and told him I was leaving. He just smirked. "Guess you couldn't handle it, huh?" I stayed with a friend for the rest of the semester. A few weeks later, he moved out too. Rumor was he transferred mid-year. Riley later told me Liam had pulled the same stunt at his new place, but that roommate called the cops after Liam started sneaking into his room while he slept. I still get chills thinking about it, how close he was every night, listening, watching, playing his twisted game. And worst of all, even now, sometimes when I'm falling asleep, I still hear it, 3 slow knocks. I wasn't thrilled about moving into the dorms. I can still picture myself standing before that 6-story red brick building on the far side of campus, suitcase in hand, my mom behind me reminding me to double check if I packed my toothbrush. I nodded, pretending confidence I didn't feel. The building looked older than the brochure suggested, its paint flaking, an exit sign flickering above the glass doors, and the faint scent that hit as soon as I stepped inside, a strange blend of bleach, microwaved popcorn, and dust. My name's Layla Warren, and this happened during my freshman year at Ashwood University, a medium-sized college in Illinois. I'd been paired with a random roommate named Kayla. Never seen her, never spoken to her. The school only provided her name and our room assignment, B21. When I got there, her side was already set up. A neatly tucked bed on the left, a suitcase stashed beneath it, a few bits of decor, a string of fairy lights, a printed photo of some foggy lake taped to the wall, and a small candle she wasn't supposed to have. I remember thinking, great, one of those girls will spend all night on FaceTime, but when Kayla finally arrived, she was nothing like I imagined. Tall, frail, with light hair twisted in a careless knot and dark circles framing her eyes. She barely glanced at me as she walked in. "Hey, you must be Layla, right?" "Yeah," I said, smiling awkwardly. "Hey." She dropped her bag on the bed. "Cool. I'll take the left side, that fine?" "Sure," I replied. That was it. No small talk, no questions, no friendly curiosity, just silence. For the next few days, she was almost invisible. She'd vanish before sunrise and return long after midnight. I'd hear the soft click of the door, her quiet steps on the carpet, and the faint creak of the bed as she climbed in, never turning on a light, never saying a word. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maybe she was busy or already had her own circle. College worked that way. Some people dove in, others disappeared. But it started feeling strange when I realized nearly 2 weeks had passed without seeing her during the day. Small things began to bother me. The smell. Every night a faint trace of perfume, floral yet sharp, like jasmine laced with smoke. And her phone never stopped buzzing when she wasn't there. Once, I noticed the screen light up again and again. Unknown caller. One Thursday night, it was pouring outside, and I was up finishing an essay. Close to midnight, the doorknob turned softly, the lock clicking. When the door opened, Kayla slipped in, drenched. Her hoodie was soaked through. She looked startled to see me awake. "Oh hey," she said from the doorway. "Hey," I answered. "You okay? It's pouring out." She paused. "Yeah, just went for a walk." "At midnight?" I asked. She gave a half shrug. "I like the rain." Then she climbed into bed, still wearing her wet clothes. By morning, she was gone again. A few days later, all her things disappeared. I came back from class, opened the door, and found her half of the room completely bare. No lights, no picture, no candle, just a dent in the carpet where her bed frame had sat. I texted her, "Hey, did you move out or something?" No answer. Days passed. Then a week. Nothing. I asked the dorm office. Her name was still on the roster, but they said sometimes students take temporary leave. It didn't quite add up, but I didn't question it. Truthfully, I was relieved. I rearranged everything, pushed my bed to the center, added a shelf, hung some posters. For the first time, it felt like my room. Months passed quietly. I barely thought of her again, until April. It was a Sunday night. I'd gone to bed early for a midterm the next morning. Around 2 a.m., I woke to the sound of keys jingling outside my door. Then a soft click. Someone was unlocking it. I froze as the knob turned and the door creaked open. Light spilled in from the hallway, outlining a thin figure carrying bags. I sat up. "Who's there?" I whispered. The door opened wider, and I saw her face. "Kayla?" She looked exactly the same, only paler, eyes hollow. She stepped in like she belonged, dropped a duffel bag on the floor and said sharply, "What the hell happened to the room?" "What?" I asked, confused. "Why's my stuff gone? Where's my bed?" "You left?" I stammered. "You've been gone 6 months." She stared at me blankly. "I was at my boyfriend's," she said flatly. "Okay, but you didn't tell me that," I said. "You never texted back. I thought you moved out." She sighed. "Didn't get your text. My phone broke." Then she peeled off her wet jacket and began unpacking right there clothes, books, a framed photo of her and some guy smiling by a lake. "Kayla? You can't just show up in the middle of the night," I said. She looked at me coldly. "It's my room too, remember?" Something in her tone made my skin crawl. The next morning I went to housing to request a transfer. They said it might take a few days, so I stayed, one last week with her. That's when things began to unravel. She rarely slept. She'd sit up for hours, phone in hand, scrolling through nothing, screen dark. Sometimes I'd wake and see her staring at the wall, unmoving. One night I heard her whispering. I thought she was on the phone until I noticed she wasn't holding one. Her voice was quick, low. "Kayla," I whispered. No answer. I caught fragments. "He's not gone. I saw him. He was at the window." I turned on the lamp. She was sitting cross-legged, eyes wide open, facing the wall. "Kayla, are you okay?" She slowly turned toward me, her face vacant. "Do you ever feel like someone's still here, even when you know they're not?" I didn't reply. I left the room and spent the night downstairs in the lounge. A few days later, she was gone again, but her things remained. Her phone sat on the desk, unlocked. Anxiety got the best of me, and I looked. There were dozens of messages from a contact saved as E, the latest ones unread. "You can't keep ignoring me. You said you saw me again." "He's gone, Kayla. Let him go." The last message had been sent 2 days before she returned. That night, I heard movement under her bed, a faint, dragging sound. I froze. The noise shifted, slow, deliberate, like fabric scraping the floor. I forced myself to look. Nothing there. Just a few boxes, her suitcase, and a faint, sour metallic odor. When housing finally approved my transfer, I didn't care where I went. 2 weeks later, my new resident advisor mentioned that campus police had collected Kayla's belongings. She never came back. Her ex-boyfriend, the one in the picture, had died in a car crash the week she'd vanished. No one saw her on campus after that night she returned. Sometimes I replay that moment in my head, the door unlocking at 2 a.m., her whispering that eerie question, and I can still see the faint muddy footprints on the carpet leading from the doorway to her bed, none leading back out. I can still recall my first night settling into the dorms at Westfield University. It was the middle of August, the air dense with humidity, and the entire campus hummed with that anxious, buzzing energy that only new students seemed to radiate. I'd made the 6-hour drive from my small town in Kansas, my parents' aging Subaru loaded to the brim, suitcases, boxes, a tiny fridge, and a cheap Target desk lamp I convinced myself would make the place feel like my own. My assigned roommate was named Tyler Quinn. The housing office had paired us at random, and all I knew about him came from a small printed card. Hometown, Madison, Wisconsin. Major civil engineering. When I first stepped into room 214A, he was already there, sitting on his bed with headphones in. He didn't glance up right away, just gave a short nod like I'd interrupted something. "Hey man, I'm Alex," I said, dropping my duffel beside the bed. He tugged one headphone out, looked over briefly, and muttered, "Tyler." That was it. No handshake, no smile, no small talk. He turned back to his laptop screen, and I told myself not to take it personally. Everyone reacts differently to change. I figured some get loud, some retreat inward. Maybe he just fell into the latter. During those first few days, we barely exchanged words. He wasn't unfriendly, just distant, like his mind was always somewhere else entirely. The room stayed spotless, his side always in perfect order, not a single sock out of place. He'd leave early in the morning, return late at night, and spend hours motionless at his desk with the blinds drawn. One evening I called my mom. "Yeah, he's quiet," I said, trying to make it sound less unnerving. She laughed softly. "Better that than messy or noisy, right? At least he's clean." "Yeah," I said, forcing a chuckle. "That's true." By then, I had my own circle. Some guys from Literature 101 and a girl named Erin from the floor above. We'd hang out in the lounge, play ping pong, trade notes, and gossip about campus rumors. By the time I'd come back to the dorm most nights, Tyler was gone again, probably home for the weekend. It became routine, comfortable even, until that night in late October. That Friday had dragged on forever. Midterms were close, and I'd been buried in the library since morning. When I finally returned to the room around 8, Tyler wasn't there. His bed was perfectly made, laptop shut neatly on the desk. "Probably went home again," I muttered. I tossed my backpack aside, plugged in my headphones, and started gaming. The room was still unnaturally so, only the faint ticking of the radiator filled the silence once the heater kicked in. Near 11, I decided to call it a night. As I took off my headset and turned toward the bed, I caught something, just the slightest flicker of motion near the other side of the room. I froze, staring at the shadowy space beneath Tyler's bed. His mini fridge sat down there along with a few plastic storage bins, but I could have sworn something moved. I blinked hard, leaned forward, then I saw it again. A hand, human. My breath hitched as I lurched back, eyes wide. Before I could react, a voice drifted from the darkness. "Oh, you saw me." Tyler crawled out slowly, his expression void of emotion. His hoodie was half unzipped, hair matted like he'd been lying there for hours. "Dude," I said, trying to laugh it off, though my voice faltered. "What the hell are you doing under there?" For a brief second, he looked almost embarrassed, then smirked. "Just screwing around, man. Wanted to see if you'd noticed. Been under there 3 hours." He shrugged casually. "Guess I lost track of time." I waited for him to laugh, to elaborate, but he didn't. He brushed off his hoodie, muttered something about brushing his teeth, and left the room like nothing strange had just happened. I sat there for a long while, staring at the empty doorway. When he returned, I pretended to scroll through my phone. He climbed into bed, turned off the lamp, and that was it. For a few weeks after that, things went back to their silent normal. I told myself it was just a stupid prank. I even told Erin about it while we walked to class. "Wait, he hid under your bed," she said, half laughing, half disturbed. "No, his bed," I corrected. "He was under his own bed." She frowned. "That's way creepier." "Yeah," I admitted. "I'm trying not to think about it." About a month later, the tension returned. It was a Wednesday. I remembered because I had a paper due that Friday and I'd stayed up later than usual to finish it. Tyler came in around 10, dropped his backpack, and went straight to the bathroom without acknowledging me. When he came back, I was still typing. He sat on his bed, silent, staring forward at nothing. "You good, man?" I asked after a minute. He blinked like coming out of a daze. "Yeah, just tired." He switched off his lamp and lay down. By midnight, I was half asleep when I heard a faint metallic tapping, soft but sharp like something brushing against metal. The sound came from his side of the room. I lifted my head, but the darkness was thick. It stopped for a moment and I told myself it was nothing. I was drifting again when I suddenly felt that unmistakable sense of being watched. Turning my head toward the faint light from the hallway crack, I froze. Tyler was standing beside my bed. His figure loomed still and silent, his face blank, eyes locked on me. In his hand he held something heavy and dark, a hammer. I jerked back instinctively, tangled in my sheets. "What the hell, Tyler?" He didn't react at first, then slowly lowered the hammer. "Relax," he said flatly. "Just fixing my bed." "In the dark?" I snapped. "You were standing over me, dude." He blinked, confusion flickering over his expression. "You moved. Thought I woke you up." His tone stayed calm. Too calm. My pulse thundered in my ears. "Just go to sleep," I said, forcing the words out. He hesitated, muttered, "Sorry," and climbed back into his bed. I didn't sleep again that night. I sat upright until dawn, jumping at every sound the building made. The next morning, I went straight to student housing and requested a transfer. I didn't tell them the whole story, just said I felt unsafe. They told me it might take a week or two. That night, I locked the door and stayed with a friend across campus. I told Tyler I had a group project keeping me out for a few nights. He only nodded. When the transfer finally went through, I waited until he'd left for class, packed everything I owned and left without a word. I avoided that entire hallway from then on. Months later, I heard from someone in the cafeteria that Tyler had been suspended. Something about an incident in the dorms. No one would say what happened, and I didn't ask, but even now, sometimes when I close my eyes, I see it again. The faint hallway light, his still silhouette beside my bed, the hammer hanging loosely in his hand. And I wonder what might have happened if I hadn't opened my eyes that night. I still recall the morning I stuffed every belonging I had into the back of my dented silver Toyota and left behind the quiet familiarity of my hometown in Kansas. I had just graduated, and after endless applications and interviews, I finally secured my first proper job, a logistics position at a fast-growing company in Columbus, Ohio. It felt like the years of studying and hoping had finally led somewhere. Leaving my parents was harder than I'd expected. They were proud, but my mom cried that last night, clinging to me as she whispered, "Promise you'll call every Sunday, okay?" I nodded. I didn't realize then how much that promise would come to mean. The company offered relocation assistance for new hires, which helped since housing in the city was pricey. They worked with several apartment complexes that rented to employees. So, when HR asked if I'd consider sharing a 2-bedroom with another recent hire, I agreed without hesitation. It seemed like a good way to start fresh. That's how I met Ryan Hale. Ryan was from Washington, tall and lean with pale brown hair and an expensive-looking wardrobe. He carried himself with a strange sort of arrogance disguised as charm. We met during orientation week, and at first he seemed harmless, talkative, confident, always eager to share how he'd nailed his college internships and how he planned to optimize workflow systems once he got settled in. He spoke in buzzwords and corporate catchphrases that made supervisors light up, but you could see other employees roll their eyes when he wasn't looking. I stayed neutral. I just wanted to do my work and keep to myself. Our apartment was newly built, modern, quiet, with sleek gray floors and a minimalist kitchen that looked straight out of a design magazine. My room was on the right, Ryan's on the left, and we shared a small balcony overlooking the parking lot. Everything seemed fine those first few weeks. We were both adjusting to the job, and since we worked in the same department, we saw each other all day anyway. He liked the spotlight. I preferred the background. The first unsettling moment came one Friday night, about 3 weeks in. Ryan asked if I wanted to grab drinks with a group from work. I told him I was exhausted and needed to finish a few projects. He smirked and said, "You'll never climb the ladder staying home alone." I forced a laugh, but the way he said it carried a trace of mockery, like he saw me as a loser. Around 2 a.m. I heard him stumble in drunk, muttering to himself as something clattered onto the floor. I almost got up to check, but then I heard him mumble, "Guy thinks he's better than me, idiot." I froze, unsure if I'd heard right. Maybe he wasn't even talking about me, I thought. I tried to dismiss it, but after that, little things began to feel off. My toothbrush would be slightly out of place. My phone charger unplugged in the morning even though I'd left it in overnight. One morning, I found the mug my sister gave me smashed in the sink. When I asked him about it, he shrugged. "You probably dropped it and forgot." His tone was too casual, too smug. Then one morning, my phone alarm didn't go off. When I checked, my phone was dead, unplugged halfway from the wall. I was obsessive about charging it before bed. I barely made it to work on time, sweating through my shirt. That evening, I asked him, "Hey, did you unplug my phone last night?" He looked up, spoon halfway to his mouth, and grinned. "Why would I do that?" I hesitated. "Maybe it got bumped or something." He smirked again. "Sounds like a you problem." The way he said it made my skin crawl. After that, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I'd come home to find the air conditioner blasting in winter or lights left on in empty rooms. One afternoon, I came back early and caught him inside my bedroom. He jumped, startled, and muttered, "Just checking if you borrowed my notebook." When I told him to stay out, he grinned like he enjoyed my irritation. A few nights later, I woke around 3 a.m. and saw a faint flickering glow under my door, the kind that comes from a television. I opened it quietly, only to see Ryan standing motionless near the kitchen counter, facing my direction. He wasn't watching TV. He wasn't moving at all. After a few seconds, he whispered, "Couldn't sleep. Don't freak out," then walked away. I didn't sleep much after that. The next day, he was all smiles at work, cracking jokes and chatting like nothing happened. I started wondering if stress was getting to me. Maybe I was reading too much into everything. But then came the morning that ended all doubt. My desk was covered in chaos. Files scattered, papers ripped, folders overturned. I yelled, and Ryan came out of his room smirking. "What? Ghosts make a mess in there?" I snapped. "Were you in my room again?" He laughed. "Man, relax. You're losing it." When I told him to stop touching my things, he muttered, "Maybe lock your door next time, genius." Problem was, the bedroom doors didn't have locks, only the bathroom did. After that, I started sleeping with my phone under my pillow, my work files hidden beneath the bed, and a chair wedged against the door. For a few nights, things were quiet. Then one night around 2 a.m., I woke to the faint creak of floorboards. I stayed still, eyes half open. In the dim light from the window, I saw him crouched near my desk, wearing a hoodie. My pulse thundered as I reached over and turned on my lamp. "Ryan, what the hell are you doing?" He froze, then sprinted out of the room. I chased him down the hall, shouting. He slammed his door shut. "Open the door! I saw you!" No answer. "You're losing your mind," he finally yelled back. My hands shook from the rush of adrenaline. That's when I knew I had to get out. But breaking the lease required both tenants' consent or a huge penalty. Over the next few days, the apartment became unbearably tense. He avoided me at work, sat across the cafeteria, never spoke, but I could feel him watching. Then suddenly, one morning, he didn't show up. By lunch, everyone knew he'd been fired. Apparently, a coworker reported him for sending disturbing messages. HR called it harassment. That night, I came home feeling weightless with relief. Finally, it was over. But when I opened the door, the relief vanished. The apartment looked ransacked, couch cushions torn apart, TV screen cracked, drawers emptied, clothes shredded. My laptop gone. My room looked like it had been hit by a hurricane. I called the apartment manager immediately, filed a police report, and sent photos of everything. The officers said they'd pursue charges since his name was still on the lease. That night, I stayed at a coworker's place. I never slept there again. For weeks after, every creak in my hallway made me flinch. I'd wake to phantom sounds, soft footsteps, faint clicks of doors. The police never recovered my laptop, and Ryan never came back. A neighbor told me later she'd seen him the night before his firing, loading trash bags into his car at 2 a.m. He must have known what was coming and decided to wreck my life on his way out. I still can't explain why his resentment ran so deep. Maybe he saw me as competition. Maybe he was just unhinged. Now every night before bed, I check every door, every lock, and sometimes still wake up certain that someone is standing in the dark, quietly watching me breathe. I never imagined that the quiet job I accepted that autumn would leave me sleepless years later. I was 27 back then, newly divorced, broke, and desperate for something consistent. My cousin mentioned a small residential boarding house outside Eugene, Oregon, called Willow Rest Home. It was a 2-story colonial place that looked peaceful from the outside, with a neat porch and white shutters. The advertisement read, "Room and meals provided. Looking for live-in help for light caregiving and cleaning. Must be dependable and compassionate." That last word, compassionate, caught my eye. I'd waited tables and cleaned Airbnbs, so helping the elderly didn't sound bad. At least it promised quiet. The owners were 2 older women, Edna and Marlene. They claimed to have been friends for decades. Technically, Edna owned the property, though Marlene ran most daily affairs. Edna was in her late 70s, frail, polite, with shaky hands and neatly tied white hair. Marlene, around 65, was sharp-tongued, brisk, and always talking about efficiency. The home had 7 residents, all elderly or disabled people who couldn't live alone. Most rooms had 2 beds, except the upper floor, where Edna and Marlene shared one. I did think it was odd that they slept in the same room when 2 others stood empty, but I said nothing. On my first day, Marlene gave me a quick, stern tour. Kitchen's here. Label all your food. The left fridge is staff only, the right's for residents. Don't mix them up. Got it? Got it, I replied, following her hurried steps through narrow halls. You'll mop every night after dinner, vacuum Wednesdays and Saturdays, and make sure laundry's done. These folks get cranky when their clothes disappear. She smiled thinly, professional, not friendly. As we passed the den, Edna hobbled out. "Oh, is this our new helper?" she asked softly. "Yes," said Marlene. "This is Leia. She'll keep things tidy." Edna's smile was gentle. "Welcome, dear." It's nice to have another friendly face. There was sadness behind her eyes, like she wanted to say more but couldn't. The first week passed uneventfully. The place was aged but comfortable. Creaky floors, faded floral curtains, and an ever-present scent of polish and soup. The residents were calm. There was Mr. Harrison, who leaned on a walker and loved retelling war memories. Anita, a sweet woman who chatted daily with her dead husband. And Dale, a man in his 40s with mild disabilities who collected baseball cards. Marlene ran the home like a drill sergeant up at dawn, shouting for everyone to come to breakfast, then scolding me to scrub faster. "Efficiency, Leia. Efficiency," she'd snap. Edna stayed upstairs most days. Sometimes she came down for lunch, pale and trembling, gripping the railing. "You all right, Miss Edna?" I asked one day. She smiled faintly. "Oh, I just get spells. Marlene takes good care of me. She gives me my shots and makes sure I rest." "Allergy shots," she added, eyes darting away. One rainy evening, while mopping, I heard coughing from the staircase. Edna sat halfway down, clutching her chest. "Miss Edna?" She tried to wave me off, but looked weak. "I need my injection." "Marlene's gone for groceries. I can't wait." "I'm not a nurse," I hesitated. "It's simple," she whispered. "Top drawer in my room. Just in the arm." I helped her upstairs. The room was dim, wallpaper peeling, a single lamp casting a soft glow. 2 twin beds stood side by side, the one by the window clearly hers. The other had stacks of papers, pill bottles, and checkbooks. I found the syringe in a small pouch labeled prednisol, steroid injection. Her name was printed on it, so I assumed it was fine. I gave her the shot as carefully as I could remember from watching nurses care for my dad years ago. Soon her breathing steadied. "You're an angel," she murmured. "Thank you." "No problem. But you should really see a doctor." Marlene handles that. She used to be a nurse's aide. The air smelled strongly of antiseptic and something metallic. While straightening the blanket, I asked casually, "Why do you two share this room?" "There's more up here." She hesitated. "I don't like being alone. I get night terrors." Before I could respond, the front door slammed. "Edna!" Marlene's voice boomed. She stormed upstairs, eyes blazing. "What the hell are you doing up here?" "Edna wasn't feeling well," I explained. "I told you no staff upstairs." "Calm down. I just gave her shot." Her eyes widened briefly, then softened. "Oh, right. Thank you." But her tone stayed cold. Helping Edna into bed, she smiled at me sweetly. "Next time, just get me, okay? Some medications aren't what they appear." The way she said it made my skin crawl. Over the next weeks, small things began to feel off. Marlene controlled the mail entirely. Whenever residents asked about their checks, she'd wave them off with, "Don't worry, I deposit them for you." One night, I saw her slip several envelopes into her purse before leaving. Another time, I caught her creeping barefoot into the kitchen after midnight, flashlight between her teeth. She pulled a plastic grocery bag from under the sink, unwrapping newspaper bundles, each stuffed with cash. When a floorboard creaked, she froze. Her flashlight swung toward me. "Jesus, Laia," she hissed, "trying to scare me to death?" "Just getting water," I muttered. "Then do it and go to bed." She watched me coldly, shoved the bag back and left. I checked it later. Thousands in cash. My unease turned to fear. Weeks passed, and Edna's health declined fast. She barely moved from bed. Marlene claimed she'd called a doctor, though none ever appeared. Then one morning she came down red-eyed and flatly said, "Edna passed in her sleep." The dining room fell silent. Some residents wept quietly, others just stared. "Did you call the coroner?" I asked. "It's handled," she said. "She had a DNR order, natural causes. The funeral home's coming tonight." Something about her tone felt wrong. That night, I watched from the porch as a hearse drove off in the rain. Marlene joined me, cigarette in hand. "Sad, huh? 30 years we were friends. Guess it's just me now." Her lips smiled, but her eyes didn't. After Edna's death, she grew harsher, snapping at residents, enforcing strict rules. No food waste, lights out by 10, no questions about the mail. Then people started vanishing. The first was Dale. He told me one afternoon that his sister mailed him a $300 check. 2 days later, he asked Marlene if it arrived. "No check this month," she said, but earlier I'd seen her tuck something into her sweater pocket. That night I heard faint scraping outside, pause, scrape again. Looking out, I saw her kneeling near the fence, flashlight in her mouth, shoveling dirt. When she turned, the light caught her face, thin grin, yellowed teeth, eyes wild. We locked eyes for half a second before I ducked out of sight, heart pounding. By morning, Dale was gone. "Where's Dale?" I asked at breakfast. "Moved in with his sister," she said casually. "His room smelled of bleach." I began keeping records, notes in my phone. Sneaky photos. Anything to prove what I suspected. Then came the night she lost control. Around midnight, she appeared at the end of the hall. "You've been watching me?" she said quietly. "What?" "Don't play dumb, sweetheart. Always snooping. Touching my things. Marlene, you're scaring me." "Good. Maybe you should be scared." She lunged, biting my cheek so hard I screamed. Blood ran down my face as I shoved her off and bolted toward the door, shouting for help. The residents stirred. Mr. Harrison called out, "Someone call 911." A neighbor heard and phoned the police. They found her sitting on the stairs, drenched in my blood, muttering nonsense. She was arrested for assault. But once investigators searched the property, the truth surfaced. Behind the lilac bushes, they found disturbed earth. Detectives, reporters, and flashing lights swarmed the scene. They unearthed 7 bodies, each buried with small personal items, glasses, rings, wallets. 2 matched missing residents from the previous year. Another was an old woman whose family had been told she died naturally. At the bottom of the last grave lay Edna, wrapped in plastic. Cause of death: poisoning from excessive medication, the same injections I'd given her. Marlene had forged documents, stolen social security checks, and collected life insurance payouts. Months later, I attended her trial. She looked smaller, frail, white-haired. For a moment I thought maybe she felt guilt. Then she looked up, met my eyes, and smiled faintly. "You should have minded your business, Leia. You were next." Her calm voice still haunts me. Sometimes I wake at night to faint digging sounds, the scent of damp soil filling my mind. 2 years later, Willow Rest Home was demolished, replaced by a duplex. Yet every time I drive by that street, I glance toward where the garden once was, because no matter how long it's been, I still hear her whisper, "I should have poisoned you too."